Hello, BookTube. This is the third and final part of my fairy tale reread project. This episode is going to cover fairy tale volumes 42 through the final volume 63. Fairy tale is the creation of Hiro Mashima. It lasted for 545 chapters in 63 volumes. It was published from 2006 through 2017 in Weekly Shonen Jump. So Fairy Tale is set in a fantasy world called Earthland, in which a small portion of the population are capable of using magic, called wizards. Many of these wizards come together in guilds where they take on various job requests and form bonds of camaraderie. No guild in the Kingdom of Fury is as infamous as Fairy Tale, and no Fairy Tale wizard is as infamous as Natsu Dragneel. These two young men here and here. Natsu is a fire dragon slayer. He was the adoptive son of a dragon named Ignil. Natsu travels around Fury with his Exceed friend Happy, who is the blue cat here, looking for Ignil, who has gone missing. In the first chapter, Natsu and Happy meet Lucy, a young celestial spirit wizard, and after an adventure together, Natsu invites Lucy to join him in Fairy Tale. And together they form the core of what eventually will become the main cast, as their team grows to include the strongest woman in Fairy Tale, Ursa Scarlet, and Natsu's frenemy, Gray, who's this guy in the back. Later in the series, a young Sky Dragon Slayer named Wendy joins Fairy Tale, along with her Exceed Guardian, Carla. Other major Fairy Tale members include the Master Makarov, the first Master Mavis, who founded Fairy Tale a century before the series began, and who isn't kind of becomes prominent in the later half of the series. Other major characters include Juvia and Gajil, an Iron Dragon Slayer, who both were former enemies of Fairy Tale, who joined. There's also Kana and Gildarts, the strongest man in Fairy Tale. Panther Lily is Gajil's Exceed friend. Laxus is probably the second strongest guy in Fairy Tale. And then his team, the Raigenshi, are behind him. And there's a whole bunch. Oh, and there's Mira and Lisana and Elfman and the whole cast of Fairy Tale. So, over the course of the series, the gang go on a number of adventures together, sometimes involving the whole guild in conflicts with either other legal guilds, or taking down dark guilds, or massive wars. So, let's go to Volume 42. So, Volume 42 begins probably the best arc of Fairy Tale, the Tartarus arc. So, in addition to legal wizarding guilds, there are also guilds that take on criminal or illegal job requests, or are themselves criminal organizations, and these are called dark guilds. For much of Fairy Tail's history, the dark guilds were controlled by an alliance of three incredibly strong dark guilds, the Balam Alliance. Gradually, over the course of the series, the Balam Alliance falls. First with Oresian Seis, and then Grimoire Heart, and so in Volume 42, Tartarus makes its move. And so the conflict starts when Tartarus, a member of Tartarus named Jackal, destroys the Magic Council. And shortly thereafter, the other members of the Nine Demon Gates, who are the people surrounding Natsu, begin assassinating the former members of the Magic Council to obtain control of a magical superweapon. So Fairy Tail enters the conflict when Tempester, this guy here, attacks an old friend of Makarov's named Yajima. Yajima was a Magic Council member who retired and opened up a restaurant. He is also a commentator for the Grand Magic Games. And so one of the recurring gags is that various Fairy Tail wizards will be working at Yajima's restaurant. And in this case, Laxus and his team are working when Tempester arrives. And Laxus fends off Tempester, who commits suicide. The thing about the members of Tartarus is that they can be resurrected. And this causes basically a poison bomb to go off. Because when Tempester dies, he explodes in a massive anti-magic particles that can poison wizards. And so Laxus and his team are grievously wounded and are taken out of commission for the rest of the arc. And this brings Fairy Tail into the conflict. So Makarov takes command and sends out various Fairy Tail teams to the locations of other former council members who, for the most part, have been assassinated. However, Natsu and his team end up finding a member who's alive, and they face Jackal, who Natsu handily defeats because, well, Jackal's power doesn't really work on Natsu. And so the conflict begins to rage as a few members of Fairy Tail are captured, and Natsu is captured trying to rescue them. And then a massive battle erupts as the Fairy Tail Guild is destroyed, and the fight is taken to Tartarus's guild hall. And so there's a number of fights between the key members of Fairy Tail and the Nine Demon Gates, who have already talked about Jackal and Tempester. There is also Keys, Ezel, Silver, I think Torufuazar, Friendmouth, Kyoka, and Sela. So there are a few really good fights in this arc. I particularly like Wendy's fight with Ezel, and she is largely on her own on this fight, and it is really good. It shows a lot of character development on Wendy's part, and really kicks her into high gear, which she sticks with for much of the rest of the series. Also, another really good fight is the several times that Urza fights Kyoka. that. And then that. And then boom. So yeah, really good fight. Another standout fight is Lucy. So there's a point in, so kind of how the Tartarus arc works is that gradually the 9 demon gates are defeated. But interspersed with that are moments where Fairy Tail suffers a setback. And at one point in the conflict, all of Fairy Tail except for Lucy are captured. And it's up to Lucy to use her celestial spirits to help free them. And it results in a lot of heartbreak for Lucy. But it does give her some amazing moments as she really holds her own against the various demons who come after her. Oh yeah, but this is a really cool image of Tartarus's guild hall. Right, just you know. And one thing about Fairy Tail is that Lucy does some really, like her growth as a character over the course of the series is really amazing. Just, it is. And then and just that. So yeah, that's a really good fight. Also, the fight with the big bad of the arc, Margear, which includes not just Natsu and Gray, but also Sting and Rogue from Sabretooth. Now, over this arc and the previous 2 arcs of the Grand Magic Games and the Sun Village arc, Minerva, the strongest member of Sabretooth, has a series of conflicts with Urza. And this sort of culminates in this arc where Minerva finally gets over her hatred of Urza. Here's some fighting. Yeah. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. This arc is really amazing in how things develop. It's really cool. So the thing about um, the Tartarus arc is that there's a lot of information revealed about various characters. Many of the mysteries of Fairy Tale are wrapped up. What happened to the dragons is revealed. The nature of Natsu is partially revealed. And there's a major change in the guild, which begins in volume 49 and runs through volume 51. And this is where Makarov disbands Fairy Tale and the guild goes its separate ways for a year. And Natsu returns from a training trip, reconnects with Lucy, and together with Happy they go and reform Fairy Tale. First they go and recruit Wendy from Lemnia Scale, and then they have to go get Gray and Urza. And then everybody else meets in Magnolia. And it's at that point that they learn why Makarov disbanded Fairy Tale and that Mavis has a special magic, Fairy Heart, that Zareth is after. Now, for the most part, earlier in Fairy Tale, the arcs were fairly episodic. There was no real hard storyline. And that largely remains true in the second part of Fairy Tale, although it becomes clear that the main antagonists, or at least the final villains, would be two characters, Zareth and Acnologia, both of whom are introduced physically in the Sirius Island arc. So Zareth is an immortal wizard who has left behind, or who leaves behind, a lot of magic, whether he intended it or not. Zareth is cursed with contradictions. And during his life, he met a young Mavis and taught her magic, and she becomes like him, although not evil. She still is very much a Fairy Tale wizard. So the final arc focuses on Zareth trying to claim the Fairy Heart so that he could then defeat the other main antagonist of Fairy Tale, Acnologia. Acnologia is a dragon who was once human. Like Natsu, Wendy, and Gajeel, Acnologia is a dragon slayer. However, it's revealed during the Grand Magic Games that dragon slayers who slay dragons end up transforming into dragons. And there's a reason why Natsu and the other dragon slayers did not turn into dragons, besides the fact that they didn't kill a dragon. So from volume 52 through the final volume, the beginning of volume 63, sees Fairy Tale going to war with Zareth's empire, which has the weird name of Alvarez. And so Zareth's forces are largely typified by his Spriggan 12, his elite generals. So this is Zareth. His group includes his chief of staff, Invil, who has magic, winter magic. Then Agil, who has sand magic. God Serena, who's an artificial dragon slayer and a traitor because he was originally in Wizard Saint in Fiore. Then Wall, who's a machine. And then Jacob, who's an assassin. And Brandish, who has power over matter. And then Demaria, who controls time. Then Neinard, who's something of a necromancer. And then there's Bloodman, who has a death magic. And then there are the three strongest of the Spriggan 12. Lockhart, who basically can control sensations. And then August, who's the strongest male wizard of the Spriggan 12. And then Irene, who's the strongest woman. And her magic is an advanced form of enchantment. And so basically the war takes place on many fronts, and there's a lot of back and forth victories between Fairy Tale and their allies and Zerov. So the war begins with a four-pronged attack. Fairy Tale fends off the first wave of the attack and then sends out reinforcements to north and south to help Blue Pegasus and Sabretooth in the north and Lamia Scale and Mermaid Hill in the south. And this leads to a number of conflicts as well. And then Irene is confronted by Acnologia, and basically she reverses the Empire's reverses by pretty much changing the geography of Fiori. And then everybody groups up at the Fairy Tale Guild, and so there's another round of fighting that results in most of the Spriggan 12 falling, as well as Natsu versus Gray. It is revealed in the Tartarus arc that Natsu, not only is he a dragon slayer, but that he is, spoiler alert, Zeroth's younger brother, who was resurrected as an Aetherius, a demon of the Book of Zeroth. And Gray's father was a reanimated corpse, serving as one of the 9 demon gates. And Gray inherits his father's ice demon slayer magic. And he's kind of manipulated unwittingly to view the demon aspect of Natsu, E and D, as his arch enemy, even though once he is told that it's Natsu, that he really should have come to his senses immediately of, oh, so there's a whole bunch of bullshit going on here, and just knock it off. But there is, during the war, a brief little fight between the two that Urza has to knock some sense into them so that they can get back to business. Gradually, all of the 12 are defeated until the last one remaining the last ones remaining are Larcade, Irene, and August, who does not get his own special volume cover model opportunity. And then they are knocked out. Particularly, Irene's fight with Urza and Wendy is really, really good. August is a bit more disappointing, and it must also be pointed out that neither August nor Irene are really defeated in a fight. They both basically take themselves out, and it's really interesting how that happens. And then at the end, Natsu and Zeref have their long-awaited face-off. Which takes much of volumes 61 and 62. Although other things are going on as well over the course of these volumes. And in the end, there's the conflict is decided, and then after Zeref is defeated, Acnologia basically becomes the final antagonist in volume 63. Although he'd made his presence known during these volumes as he's trying to get to Magnolia so he could probably take out Zeref himself. But what happens is Acnologia ends up getting empowered and ends up getting split. And he summons the Dragon Slayers into his mind, and then his physical body goes and destroys everything. And so it's basically a two-pronged attack against him. The Dragon Slayers trying to defeat him in his mind, and the rest of the guild led by Lucy, and the rest of the wizards of Fiore, and the members of the Empire who are still conscious, coming together to try to stop the physical body of Acnologia. And it's really, in one way, that final fight is really good. Particularly, I think, how it showcases everybody coming together to defeat a seemingly unsurmountable enemy. But then it also is, in a way, rather rushed. Because Acnologia is taken down rather quickly in this final fight. And I'm not all that fond of Acnologia's motivations. I mean, although he is, I guess, just basically a shadow version of Natsu, who is just the negative traits taken up to a ridiculous level. But, yeah. And so, Fairy Tale ends with an epilogue chapter that serves as a sequel. It pretty much wraps up and gives hints of what happened to everybody in the year since Zeref and Acnologia's defeat. And a sequel hook for Fairy Tale 100 Years Quest, which is the currently ongoing sequel series to Fairy Tale. So that wraps up my Fairy Tale reread. So while, again, I didn't enjoy this reread as much as I enjoyed the reread last year, I think probably what I'm going to do going forward is, rather than a yearly reread, I will do either once every 2 or 3 years and see how that works. And maybe instead of doing a binge where I read all 63 volumes in one go, that I will maybe take it a bit slower. But we shall see. Anyway, BookTube, that's all I have for this evening. So thank you. Have a great rest of your evening, and I will see you either tomorrow with the December new releases wrap up, or I will do that video on Monday. So regardless of when I put out that video, look forward to it. So until then, thank you BookTube, and have a great evening and weekend.